Hi guys, Buildzoid here, and today I'm going to be complaining about running the channel. Something I haven't done in a very long time, but the thing is, I haven't managed to record a video in 10 days, so here we are. I'm complaining about running the channel because the eternal struggle of... I don't even know what it is. It's just, I don't like making videos. Like, let's just get that out of the way. I do not like making videos. I like overclocking, and I like measuring things, and I like testing hardware, and I like sharing information. I do not like making videos. Okay? I actually enjoy making the thumbnails that the channel now has, because like the process for most of the thumbnails is to just like, for me it's just like make something visually cool. So something like that. Like, I'm actually really upset that I didn't work on this thumbnail at a higher resolution because it looks so cool. I'm actually gonna pull it up if I can remember where the original image is. Is it not in this folder? Are you kidding? Why is it not in this folder? Where is it then? And this video is going to be a dumpster fire. Like, if you think this video is going to continue... Oh, no, it is here. Yeah, like, this just looks so cool. And I only worked on it at 1080p, and I'm very upset about that. If I worked at it at 4K, it would have been, like, a great... I mean, at 1080p, it's still totally usable as a desktop background, but if I had worked at it at full resolution, like, it would have been a better desktop background, because it would fit on more screens. But yeah, I worked on it at 1080p, so we're kind of stuck with it at this size instead of huge scales. But yeah, the liquid metal one, however, I do have that one at like full resolution. So yeah, I don't know where that one is though, so we're not going to take a look at that one right now. Anyway, so I've mostly been making the like these are like anti thumbnails. So I actually want to kind of talk about what's going on with the thumbnails. So the reason why the channel now has thumbnails is because, you know, what I eventually realized, it's like it's hard for me to search through my own videos. Like, let's say I want to find a like some motherboard video or some VRM video, and it's like if you're trying to just go by the thumbnail images, it's really difficult. Like, YouTube doesn't, like, in this view, right, the title of the video is down here, and most of the titles are like Mobo PCB breakdown. So like, from a searchability perspective, this is a disaster. Like, the first 3 words of the video title are just telling us what type of video it is. They're not telling us what the video is about. So if I'm like, I need to find this motherboard, then it's like, where is it? Right? So that's kind of why we now have thumbnails, is because I just kind of decided, well, I want my videos to be easier to search through. So that's kind of the idea behind them, is it's just like easier for me to find videos that I'm looking for. Because now it's like, oh, I want the Apex video, and it's like, well, it's right there. It's the red one. The EK ones actually don't really work that well. I'm sort of looking at them and realizing that now. I mean, the thing is, at the end of the day, the name of the board is in the thumbnail generally now, and so it's a bit bigger than the text under the video, so yeah. Kind of, like, mostly achieves what I was aiming for. But from an actual YouTube content creator perspective, my thumbnails are basically anti-thumbnails, because, like, basically, like, they make it very clear that they, like, or at least one of my goals with them is to make it very clear that, like, these are my videos from my channel, because let's be honest, I don't think anybody's going to make their thumbnails look like this anytime soon. But from like their anti-algorithm, in the sense, like, there's no face in them, right? And the algorithm likes faces because apparently humans like faces. I can't imagine why humans like looking at other humans. It just doesn't make for any sense to me. Especially, it's like when I want to watch a video about a motherboard, I don't want a random human showing up in the video about the motherboard. But hey, that's just me apparently. Similarly, I don't care about, like, thumbnail faces. But the thing is, like, the algorithm doesn't particularly appreciate my views on what makes good thumbnails or good content, so yeah, these are basically anti-thumbnails. That's what I'm getting at. But I do them for fun. Like, that's It's kind of like these are not like one of the reasons I'm like, oh, super like annoyed with making videos. It's like, no, I actually kind of enjoy just sort of taking a picture of some random hardware and then just manipulating it. Cause like I do that on my own, like in my spare time anyway. I have a whole folder of just like weirdly filtered images and yeah, that kind of thing. So it's just like, well, now more people get to see what kind of visual messes I like to produce when given too much time with a photo. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of that. So the thumbnails are literally just to make it more obvious that my videos are mine and make them slightly less difficult to search through when you have like a page full of them. Or when I use the search bar on YouTube and it pulls up a bunch of videos, I don't have to wonder like which of the like what would be a good one to try demonstrate that with. Um, let's see if I can get this one. We're just gonna search for it. Okay, no, it's actually pretty well. This one is not obvious who this comes from, right? Like this one is just like this doesn't even look like it belongs to that motherboard. Um, Same for this one actually. Like, and that is an actual thumbnail, so good job me on that one. I mean, I can recognize the sort of photos, like I can recognize the pictures that my phone takes, but yeah, these are not good. And then we have some of the videos where like the thumbnail is literally just a random part of the BIOS, and then it's just like, or like this, yeah, the like Fire Strike as a thumbnail is just like that's great. I have no idea which video that's referring to. Um, so yeah, that's kind of what the new thumbnails are supposed to address, is just like making the videos less difficult to find for me. I don't know if they help anybody else, but that's the logic behind them. Now then, let's complain about the actual video making. So, um, for whatever reason, I've just not really been like I've been doing a bunch. Like I've repaired a bunch of GPUs recently. I actually repaired even a motherboard, but the repair was kind of dumb. Like that's kind of the issue is like when you have a repair where it's like, oh, there was a cut trace, I bridged the cut trace, it works now, amazing. It's not really, I don't really consider that particularly content worthy. As but yeah, but I've done a few repairs, and some of them were actually kind of interesting. But the thing is, like, I don't know why I haven't shot those videos. Like, I thought about shooting those videos, and then I kept delaying it for some reason. I don't know why I've been delaying it. It's because I feel bad about like the Z690 Tachyon PCB breakdown. That I think the very first takes of that video were probably shot sometime in December. But I didn't like any of them because at the time there was one uncertainty with that board, which is like, is it going to get 1T command rate support or is it not going to get 1T command rate support? Well, it did eventually get 1T command rate support. And now the main struggle I have with it is like, I really like the board. But it's $550 US, whereas the Unify X is $500. And I honestly, well, the Tachyon does do 1T command rate to slightly higher memory speeds than my Unify X does. But it's like, I can't really tell a difference between the two of them. And so it's just like, and well, oh yeah, let's just dive right into it. Like, this is perfect. Like one of the issues with the channel, I feel like eternally, is what I want the videos to be versus what people want the videos to be, and then like what I want people to get out of the videos versus what people actually get out of the videos. So for me, the PCB breakdowns are really more about appreciating like the components that go into making a motherboard. Mostly the VRM, because quite frankly, the chipset's always the same, and there's a bunch of like, like your motherboard has a Super I/O chip. I couldn't care less about the Super I/O chip. It does a bunch of very important things, but I literally could not care less about the Super I/O chip. Unless it's broken, I don't care. um, and that, so that's kind of the thing. And there's a lot of other chips on your motherboard that support, offer like core functionality, but they're not really special or there's not really a lot of like, oh, this is a cool chip. It's just like, no, this is the chip that does this. It does this on basically every motherboard released for the last X years, right? So we don't get into those kinds of things. And Yeah, and so for me, the PCB breakdowns have always been more about just appreciating like cool motherboards and cool GPUs and like cool power delivery systems. And a lot of people might be like, "How can a VRM be cool?" And it's like, I don't know. I just think like when like I have motherboards in my motherboard collection, which are literally just there because I was like, this VRM is neat. And that's it. Like, it's not even a good board. It's just like I saw the board and I was like, that VRM looks weird. I wonder what's going on with that. And so I have one. Um, and yeah, and so the PCB breakdowns for me are supposed to be basically that. But for most people who end up on my channel, they're supposed to be reviews, right? So most people want like, it's like, oh, should I buy this board or that board? And it's like, well, I can't really tell you if you should buy a Tachyon or a Unify X because like I like I like the Tachyon, I like the Unify X. I ultimately decided to use the Tachyon for all of my LN2 overclocking, but honestly, I think like I don't have a good reason for why I made that decision, you know? um yeah, like I literally do not have a specific reason for it's like why did I use the Unify X instead of the Tachyon, or I mean the Tachyon instead of the Unify X. It was like like if the Tachyon was at least orange, I would have that excuse. Right? Like if it came with like if it came in the like classic Gigabyte overclocking orange motherboards color scheme, then I would just say, well, it was orange, and therefore I'm going to use it. But it's not orange, it's gray, like basically all modern motherboards. So, uh, yeah, I don't even have that excuse. And so, and so that's been kind of holding up the Tachyon PCB breakdown because it's just like I don't want to give a like evaluation to the board because it's like it's not supposed like the PCB breakdowns aren't supposed to be that in my opinion. Like it's not even my opinion. Like they're literally not supposed to be that. Like I've decided that. Like that's kind of that. And the fact that most people view them as reviews is kind of like, well, they're not supposed to be reviews, but it's just oh well. Yeah. And so the Tachyon PCB breakdowns has been getting delayed and delayed and delayed. And so you might be like, but isn't there like other PCB breakdowns that you could work on? Yes. Yes, there is. Another PCB breakdown that's been making very little progress is the RTX 3090 Ti Supreme X. I've had that. Basically, I've wanted to do a PCB breakdown of that card basically since it launched, and I saw the PCB because I was like, oh man, this is really nice. Like, it's one of the nicest 3090 Ti's out there as far as I'm concerned. But the thing is like I've been wondering like how like one of the reasons I like the card is because it comes with board protection fuses. But that leads into the question of like, so how much how much do we talk about the fuses in the PCB breakdown? Because like because I think it would be cool if more GPUs just came with board protection fuses, and I refer to them as board protection fuses for a very specific reason. Those fuses are not there so that you can replace them when they fail. Those fuses are there so that when something else on the card fails, you can't do more damage. Um, like one of the most common failures on like high-end GPUs, especially high-end NVIDIA cards, is that the VRM blows up. High-side MOSFET fails short circuit. Problem with high-side MOSFETs failing short circuit is that they cause massive amounts of destruction when they do that. They can do everything from burning holes in the PCB to destroying memory controllers, destroying GPU cores, destroying like memory chips, everything. Like if it's on the output of the VRM, a failing high-side MOSFET can probably kill it. And it also the failing high-side MOSFET can easily just burn a hole through the PCB, and that's always fun to deal with. Now, if you have a fuse, in theory, the fuse will limit how much energy is available to that short circuit when it occurs, minimizing how much damage can occur. And also, the other thing it prevents is you can't power cycle the card. Like, you can't send 12 volts into that short circuit again and again and again and again, steadily causing more and more and more damage. And so fuses are good, after the card's warranty expired, because as long as the card has a warranty, you can just send it back to the manufacturer, and regardless of how much damage the failing MOSFET caused, like, that's the manufacturer's problem, not yours. And so on one hand, it's like, I really, like, I would like to see more fuses on GPUs, but do I really want to make a big deal out of the fact that the card has these fuses? Do I have to explain why the fuses are good? Because the thing is, like, I've seen I've seen comments from people where it's like, oh, you should just replace the fuse, and it's like, no, you should definitely not just replace the freaking fuse. Um, like the failed fuse is the symptom; it's not the cause. Generally speaking, there are some exceptions. Like there's one series of cards that apparently has one of the fuses is a little bit too small, and so it just tends to fail like for no good reason. Um, but generally speaking, if the fuses are appropriately sized for the GPU that they're on, if the fuse is failed, you do not just replace the freaking fuse. And so one of the issues I've had is like, well, do I spend the time explaining why the fuses are good, or do I just kind of gloss over it like, oh, it's got fuses good? Because I don't know. Like it's one of those things. Because like, yeah, that's just one of those many struggles that I have with making videos. And then another thing with that video is like I don't particularly like the new 12-pin power connector. I think it's actually like I think it's just a straight downgrade from 3 separate 8 pins, because it is 3 separate 8 pins have 9 active grounds and 9 12-volt 12-volt pins. The 12 pin has 6 of each. Like, it literally just has less connections than 3 separate 8 pins. Like, it is not better than 3 separate 8 pins. I know it literally breaks out into 3 8-pin power connectors, but that doesn't change the fact that it only has, like, you know, it has literally 3 12-volt pins less than 3 separate 8 pins. Because it's a 12-volt instead of, like, not, like, and actually, if you really wanted to get extra sort of fun with the PCIe power cables, you can actually set up a 6-pin. Like if you do what AMD did on the RX 480, where the 6-pin power connector doesn't have a sense pin, you end up with a 6-pin power connector that can literally handle as much power as an 8-pin power connector. And so really you could have like 3 separate, like you could have 3 6-pins that do as much, that handle more power than the new 12-pin power connector. And so I don't like the new 12-pin power connector. I think like ultimately I understand why it exists. It's not going to get changed at this point. Like Intel has created the spec. The spec is, the spec is accepted. It's being adopted. We already see this abomination of a connector on the 3090 Ti's. That still doesn't change. And like the thing is like, because the problem is like the 8-pin power connector is massively underrated. Right? Like the specification is like it can only do 150 watts, but it can do at least 300. It can do a lot more than what it says that it can do. The thing is, they can't just, like, the problem is you can't just go and change the spec, because it can do at least 300 is assuming that you have 18 gauge wires or a 16 gauge, and if you have 16 gauge wires, it can do even more. But that's kind of the issue, is like you can't retroactively go and go like, okay, well now 8-pin GPU, like 8-pin PCIe connectors can now do 300 watts, which would be much more realistic for what the connector is actually physically capable of most of the time, because there's probably some power supplies out there that are like barely skirting by the 150 watt, specification, and it's like, well, you can't do that. Right? Like you have to make sure that people can't plug, like to some extent, you have to prevent people from plugging in things that won't work together, even though like 3090s already were causing issues with like shutting down PSUs that on it like should theoretically be able to handle them. So ultimately, well, it would be a bad idea to make a spec that just straight up causes issues. The 3090 is very generous with its power limit, so that's more of like the 3090 kind of abusing the fact that like the 8-pin power limit is like a average power limit, there's not an official specification for how much peak power you're allowed to push through it. So it's like, well, 600 watts for like a fraction of for like a millisecond is fine, right? Or a microsecond is fine, right? On some power supplies it isn't. Yeah, so it's like, do I include my thoughts on the 12 pin? I don't know. Is it relevant? Does it even really matter? Because on one hand, I do think the 12 pin is kind of dumb, but on the other hand, like, it's not going away and it's not going to get changed, so do I bother? Um, what else is there? Oh, that's most of it, really. And well, I'm eternally frustrated with the fact that like power stages have their like nominal current rating versus what's actually usable. That just annoys me to no end. You know, like your 70 amp smart power stages where it's like you do not ever want to be pushing 70 amps through them. Like as soon as you have more than one of them in a small area of the board, like you really do not want to be pushing their nominal current rating through them because they're just going to get entirely too hot. In fact, they're going to get insanely hot even if you're pushing like half of their nominal current rating just because of how the efficiency curves work out. But um, yeah, it's like that's one of those like the frustrations I generally have with PCB breakdowns where it's like, do I have to get into that or do I just go like, oh yeah, these are 70 amps more power stages because like this is one of those things that just frustrates me to no end. Is just like if you just say these are 70 amp power stages and somebody's going to go like, oh, there's 24 of them on the board, therefore the VRM can handle 24 times 70 amps, and it's like, no, it can't. Well, if you water cool it, it probably can. But if you're under normal, reasonable conditions, it can't. It really can't, and it shouldn't. In fact, the documentation won't even tell you how much cooling you need at 70 amps output for most 70 amp smart power stages because you're not supposed to be doing that with them. And so you might be wondering, why are they nominally 70 amps? Well, because they're better than the 60 amp parts that came before them. And it's like, can you push 60 through the 60 amp parts? No, really? So why are those called 60? Well, because if you keep going down that sort of trend, like your 50 amp parts, you don't really want to be pushing 50 amps. 40 amp parts, actually you can. 40 amp parts can actually be expected to do 40 amps under not completely insane operating conditions. And the thing is, the like first DR MOS components were, I think, like 25 amps or something. And the like 35 amp and 25 amp parts, like they'll actually do the max current rating. It's not really like they're going to be hot and they're going to need a lot of cooling, but it's not like the 90s and like it's not like the 60, 70, 90 amp parts that we have these days where it's like, well, theoretically under very specific operating conditions you could push, however many amps through this smart power stage. You should just never do that because it's a terrible idea, thermally speaking. Whereas with the 35 amp parts, because the thing is, when you have like a 35 amp part, even if the efficiency is not great, it's only 35 amps. Like it's just not output. Like it's not pushing that much current. So even with miserable efficiency, it's just really not going to be getting that hot. But then when you look at a lot of the like 60 plus, like 50 and like it depends on the specific part, but as you go up the nominal current ratings, like you get to parts where like if you hit their nominal current rating, they're going to be outputting like 15 watts of heat each. So if you have like 10 of them and you try to do full rated current on all of them at once, it's like, oh, it's a VRM producing as much heat as a CPU. That's not reasonable at all. And so that's one of the like eternal struggles with PCB breakdowns, like where like, do I mention that every time? Do I not mention that every time? Because it makes the video longer, right? And people don't like the videos being long. And a lot of the people who watch the channel regularly, they know that you can't just take the nominal current, or at least I hope they know, but um like you can't just take the nominal current rating, multiply it by the number of phases, and go like, oh yeah, this is a great idea. Like, no, that doesn't work like that. It never worked like that. It will never actually. It did work like that for the low end, like the low end parts. It doesn't work like that for the high end parts. Um, but yeah, it's just like, do I include that? I don't know. I have literally no idea. I'm not particularly good with words, right? Or more like, or more, I'm not particularly good at understanding how other people understand words. It would be the better way to put it. Um, and yeah, so that's just been kind of holding up the 3090 Ti Supreme X PCB breakdown. Also, there's like a whole rant, like there's like I like some of the takes of that video included a whole discussion about how like the 3090 Ti PCBs make the 3090 PCBs look really freaking stupid because like I finally figured out why there was an MSVDD rail. It's because they couldn't figure out how to hook up more power stages to the UP9511. So now that we finally have a like voltage controller that's appropriate for the level of power draw that a 3090 Ti pulls, we no longer have an MSVDD rail because you have one controller that can actually deal with the chip. Though interestingly enough, like that is just a theory on my part. I don't have proof of that, but it just doesn't make sense to me that the like 3090 Ti's introduce a new really high phase count voltage controller, and the MSVDD rail just disappears, and it's like, well, that's mighty suspicious, isn't it? I wonder why that would be. It's almost like the other controllers didn't have enough phases for how much current NVIDIA wanted them to be dealing with. Now the thing is, that's kind of ill-suited as a discussion to like a customized 3090 Ti PCB that's actually better than even literally like the good 3090s. Right? Like there are 3090 PCBs which aren't completely terrible in my opinion, like the Strix and the Hall of Fame and the Kingpin Edition. And arguably the Founders Edition. Like the Founders Edition isn't as terrible as the absolute bare minimum 3090 PCB, but I still don't like it. Yeah, but like, and so making a discussion about like the base model 3090 Ti, 3090 PCB and a 3090 Ti, like custom PCB video doesn't really make a lot of sense. So maybe I should just make two 3090 Ti PCB breakdowns, one for like the Founders Edition where I can, do the comparison against like I guess I should also compare it to the regular 3090 Founders Edition. And then also the bare minimum 3090s, as I like to refer to them. And then, like it's still, I think, fair to make comparisons between like the 3090 Ti Supreme X and like a 3090 Hall of Fame and the Kingpin Edition, because that's actually a really fun comparison of the Supreme X is actually just kind of better than all of the best 3090 is still weaker in terms of power delivery than the 3090 Ti Supreme X. And like that's not even a Hall of Fame or a Kingpin edition. Like if MSI had decided to bring back the Lightning naming, I feel like they would have had to populate the full output filter, which they didn't, but yeah. Like so I have all of these like random thoughts that I'd like to stick into the video, and then it was just like, but do I include them? I'm gonna because with like say the 12-pin power connector thing, I'm gonna get a stupid comment from somebody just that wants to debate me on the power connector, and it's like, I don't feel like having a debate about the power connector. I think it's dumb, and nobody can change my mind. I understand why it exists, but I'm not changing my stance on the fact that I think 3 8-pins are still better than a single 12-pin power connector. Or six pins implemented with 3 grounds and three 12 volts. But whatever. And that's the kind of thing that just like makes me struggle with making videos. Is just like, what do I include? What do I not include? And so that's been just kind of delaying the 3090 Ti video, because yeah, I get like 30 minutes into it and then I'm like, actually, you know what? No. I don't like how this video has gone. And then there's other things like the oscilloscope videos, which come in two they come in two flavors. Basically, we have oscilloscope videos that people watch, but nobody let me restate that. Again, I'm not great with words, and I actually want to talk about how I'm not great with words as well. But anyway, so there's two kinds of oscilloscope videos on the channel. The oscilloscope videos nobody watches, and the oscilloscope videos nobody understands. Hopefully this is muted. Yes, this is muted. So this video falls into the nobody understands category. It's obviously not literal. Some people get it, but like the main point of this video for me was to show how the 1000 kilohertz setting it's completely utterly broken on the Unify X. It is very, very broken, and you should not use it. Now the VCC sense versus the socket sense, I've not really I don't like the VCC sense setting because it just it makes a bunch of the LLC settings completely, utterly useless. But socket sense does mean that you can't see your die sense voltage, so that's kind of annoying. I really don't know why MSI didn't just copy the die sense circuitry implementation that like Asus uses, because that's what Gigabyte did. And it's not like Asus came up with some super fancy way of getting accurate die sense voltage. They're just using an op amp to copy the voltage from the die sense circuitry over to the Super I/O without, without screwing up the die sense circuitry. Because the problem is, if you connect the die sense circuitry directly to the Super I/O, the Super I/O tends to live like in the middle of nowhere of the motherboard, just wherever there happens to be a lot of empty space. Whereas the die sense circuitry really should be, like, ideally is supposed to be a direct connection from the VRM controller to the CPU's die with minimum with minimum interference. So running that circuitry all the way over to the Super I/O, which probably lives somewhere around the PCIe slot's a terrible idea. You should never do that. And so that's why like Asus puts an op amp, and Gigabyte puts an op amp to basically handle that. I don't know what MSI does because I haven't, like, on both Gigabyte and Asus boards, like the op amp that handles this is super obvious. It's really not that hard to find. It typically lives very neat, like somewhere in the VRM area, usually very close to the VRM controller itself. Not that difficult to find. MSI board, I've not found how they're doing the VCC sense thing. I have no idea. I've just, yeah, no idea how they're getting that functionality, but it does screw up a lot of the load line settings. It doesn't really affect the voltage regulation, so it doesn't seem to be doing anything particularly good. It just makes a lot of your LLC settings kind of useless. Basically, levels, I think 1 through 4 are basically the same thing. Anyway, but the point of this video was primarily to show that the 1000 kilohertz setting is terrible, and if you have a Unify X, you shouldn't use it. And the problem is, like, a lot of the comments under this video ended up being people going like, oh, so the Unify X is a terrible motherboard. No, it's a good board. It just has this one BIOS option that you should never use. Right? It's like, imagine, like, yeah, like, that's basically it. But the video got a bunch of responses that are like, oh, this board is, like, really has like massive issues, and it's like, no, it doesn't. Like, funnily enough, I found out that apparently on Asus boards, if you set the VRM switching frequency to 800 kilohertz, they randomly shut down. Which I think I ran into that with my Apex without realizing what was going on. So that's fun. You can't run into any of these issues on the Gigabyte motherboards because Gigabyte, like, the funny thing is, like, MSI, Asus, and Gigabyte, they're all using, as far as I know, the exact same voltage controller. But Gigabyte just doesn't give you any, like, switching frequency settings. Like, their controller is locked at 500 kilohertz, and there's no way to change that in the BIOS. So you can't, like, you can't screw up the settings because there are no settings. But if the motherboard has settings, it's good to know which settings are good. And so the idea about, like, that was sort of the point of this video. Because, yeah, like, if you're going to have VRM settings, like switching frequency, because generally speaking, you would expect more switching frequency to be better for voltage regulation. You wouldn't expect it to make things worse, because the theory behind it is, like, if you have a higher VRM switching frequency, that means you have more PWM pulses going to the VRM. That means the controller has, there's less delay between each PWM pulse. So if you need to make an adjustment to the output voltage, you can do that sooner. Now, the part where this breaks down is that most modern high-end digital controllers actually kind of just move the pulses around pretty much freely. So what switching frequency you're at doesn't really affect the transient response that much. It's primarily going to affect something like steady state. And your steady state ripple is primarily like it's not really a thing. Like, it's super duper low. If you test a motherboard VRM with an actual just straight up like DC load, like it's basically a flat line. So, like, the steady state performance kind of doesn't matter. And so the transient response is the only thing you really care about. Well, higher switching frequencies might also put slightly less strain on the input filtering capacitors and that kind of thing. But you could just have more of those, you know. Anyway, so, but yeah, so raising the switching frequency just doesn't really achieve anything. And then on some VRM designs, especially older like analog VRM designs, it can massively help with transient response. But on modern digital controllers, it just doesn't really do much of anything a lot of the time. And in many cases, it actually makes things worse. This is definitely not the first time I've encountered a motherboard where raising the switching frequency makes the VRM actually worse at voltage regulation, though this is the worst thing I've seen in terms of that. Because this VRM just like freaks out. Like with other, I think there's like some Z390 gigabyte boards where if you use 300 kilohertz instead of like 400 or 500 kilohertz, you get better voltage regulation. But there it's like like a couple millivolts less less undershoot and less overshoot. You know, very, very minor improvement in terms of voltage regulation. It is there, you can measure it, but it's not, you know. Whereas on the Unify X, if you go to 1,000 kilohertz, the voltage just starts going up and down randomly, especially like depending on what LLC you're in. And so it's just super duper bad. And so you should just never use it, right? Like that's kind of that. It's just like, okay, this setting exists. It's bad. Don't use it. But the video didn't really seem to get that response at all. And I can't believe I have to explain that. Right? Like that's the thing for me is like yeah. So and this just goes back to the sort of like the conflict of what I want what videos I want to make versus what people want to watch, and then the conflict of what people get out of the videos versus what I want them to get out of the videos. Like this is very much a case of like, I thought this was just a nice sort of like, hey, if you have a Unify X, don't use 1,000 kilohertz because it just does stupid things to the voltage regulation. And instead I got a bunch of responses which are like, oh, it's a terrible motherboard. Like, no. And I found this testing super useful for myself because I was struggling with like stabilizing Prime 95 on the Unify X, which if you were wondering about that, where is it? Yeah, so I did a Prime 95 small FFT stable 12900 KOC on the Tachyon. I didn't do that on the Unify X because I couldn't stabilize Prime 95 small FFTs. Like, I just couldn't get it to be stable. And I was messing with like 800 kilohertz switching frequency, 1000 kilohertz switching frequency. And I was having so many problems with... And to me, it kind of was looking like maybe it's a voltage regulation thing because like the voltage was, as far as I could tell, relatively similar between the two boards. And so like the average voltage was relatively similar because I didn't have the oscilloscope hooked up. So I actually had no idea at the time what was actually going on with the voltage regulation. Which is why I like stabbing things with the oscilloscope, because I had a suspicion that it's like, oh, like there's probably like either the CPU degraded in the matter of like a couple hours, which is just no, or there's a voltage regulation issue, or like my operating temperatures are significantly higher, but they weren't as far as I could tell, and it was costing me a lot of frequency, like a lot more frequency than I thought was realistic. So, yeah, and then I eventually stabbed the board with the oscilloscope, and it's like, oh, oh, that's why. Yeah, I was right. It does actually have a voltage regulation issue, and at 1,000 kilohertz, it's super duper bad. At 500 kilohertz, it's fine, but I didn't realize that at the time. I think this video, I'm still using like 600 kilohertz or something dumb like that. Like, no, that board... Like, I've not gone and actually tested out every combination of switching frequency and LLC, but it probably is very much another, like, it is a case of, like, no, 500 kilohertz is best, and you should just not use any of the other available settings. So, which at that point you can kind of ask, like, why didn't MSI even include those settings? I have no idea. To some extent, like, some motherboard manufacturer decisions are less about what is the correct decision and more about does our competitor do this? Therefore, we will do it too. So it's like Asus has a bunch of VRM settings that also don't always give you the results that you would hope they would. Therefore, we too must have a bunch of VRM settings that may or may not actually be helpful. In fact, they could even be detrimental, but hey, that's not going to stop us from including them. Um, whereas Gigabyte, and I like, yeah, whereas Gigabyte, it's kind of interesting because in the past, Gigabyte has done this as well, like the Z390 boards, and those actually come from the factory at 400 kilohertz, which is suboptimal. Um, but yeah, like Gigabyte for Z690, they just remove the switching frequency settings and everything's great. And then like MSI and Asus have switching frequency settings, and apparently 800 kilohertz on Asus causes random shutdowns, and on MSI 1000 kilohertz causes absolutely atrocious voltage regulation. So that's fun. Um, anyway, yeah, but like in terms of that video, it's just like I don't know what I'm doing. Like admittedly, I sort of didn't really plan to like that video. I don't know. Like I feel like I really need to. I guess like it's this like, do I actually have to spoon feed everybody the conclusions, or can I trust people? Because like I don't know. To me, it seems pretty clear that if, somebody shows you, hey, this setting causes stuff to be worse, then just don't use that setting. Like, I can't believe I have to say that. Um, yeah. What else is there? Because there is more. Okay, well, actually, I think that's it. So, yeah, so that's kind of the two types of oscilloscope videos that we have. I will keep making those. They're not going away just because I love measuring things with the oscilloscope. It's great because if you have, like, it's like, oh, what LLC setting is best for this motherboard? Stab it with the oscilloscope. Does the switching frequency actually improve voltage regulation? Stab it with the oscilloscope. Most of the time, I find, like, on a lot of motherboards, it's like, oh, it actually makes things worse. Well, that's good to know. Um, and, yeah, that kind of thing. So even though those videos basically come in two flavors of like people don't get them and people don't watch them, I'm going to keep making them because, well, I don't know. Like, this is the thing is like, do I actually, because here's the thing, I can gather the data and just not make the video, right? Like, just like I can repair a GPU and not make a video about repairing it. I can do some LN2 overclocking, which is what I've been doing quite a bit of recently, and I can not make a video about it. I can, do X and just not make a video. And that's kind of probably part of why we don't have videos for the last 10 days, because it's just like, instead of worrying about how people will understand the video, if they will understand the video, will they even watch the video? I don't know. I don't even need to care. I can just do the thing I wanted to do. And but obviously the problem there being that it's like, well, I have a YouTube channel to run, so I can't do that forever. Right? Like that is not a sustainable business model. But I don't know, maybe I should do that. I just, well, no, I can't do that. I literally cannot do that. As I said, not a sustainable business model, but it's like, maybe, like, should I just not care about the views? I kind of wish I didn't care about the views. And to that extent, I will say successful videos are extremely demotivational. Like videos like that. Or the capacitor video. Yeah, this one right here. That video, actually, that there was a great big video, like, production gap right after this video, basically for the same reason. It's just like, oh, this was really successful by no fault of my own, right? Like this is, I hate this kind of video so much because, like, this isn't reliable content, right? Like, one of the whole point, like, one of the point, like, one of the goals of this channel is to basically get, well, okay, actually, one of my goal with this channel isn't going to really address this, but, like, basically one of the goals of this channel was to bully motherboard manufacturers into making motherboards that appeal to me. And I'd say I've succeeded at that to a great extent, right? We have the Apexes, we've got the Unify X boards, the Tachyon boards, the Dark boards from EVGA, the Aqua OC board from ASRock. Like, ASRock is finally building OC boards again. or at least selling OC boards again, because they kept making them. They just didn't, they didn't sell them to people, because most people see 2 DIMM slots and they think it's a downgrade, because apparently everybody and their mom is running a server at home. Their own, like their own server farm at home. I'm really good at words, as you can probably tell. Anyway, yeah, so like that kind of video is just like super demotivational, because it's like, oh, look at how successful I could be if I just made content that sucks. Yeah. I thought this was kind of an interesting video. That didn't really do that great. And it's even short. I don't know why I bother. The motherboard roundups are generally pretty successful. Oh, there was the 3090 content. That was actually fun to do. Like, trying to figure out how the hell a 3090's VRM is supposed to function. Why does it catch fire when playing New World? Oh, it's because, like, there's no safety features at all, as far as I can tell. I really wish I could do further testing on that, but it just costs too much money. And, like, it wouldn't translate, like, with the way I do things, it wouldn't translate into enough content, because I think the initial video got, like, 145K, 55K, 33K, 26K. So if I did any more, I feel like if I did any more testing on 3090 power delivery, especially since like more in-depth 3090 power delivery testing would devolve into more basically oscilloscope videos. And like I said, there's 2 kinds of oscilloscope videos. The ones nobody watches and the ones no one understands. So evidently I'd be wasting my time. Because the thing is with the oscilloscope, I've generally only showed it used for measuring voltage, but the thing is with the analog controller that you get on some of the 3090s, which I think is probably one of the connecting features of all the 3090s that died playing New World, on that controller, like there is a pin, which if you measure the voltage on that pin, you're literally measuring the output current, or at least the output current as the voltage controller is seeing it. So if my theory about the OCP being insanely high is correct, from that pin you could actually see how close you're getting to the overcurrent protection trip point, or not getting close to it at all, more like. But anyway, so that would be kind of interesting to do, but that's totally outside. Like, it costs too much, and I don't want to buy a crappy PCB 3090 for like 2 videos, like. Like, yeah, like, I don't, like, if I'm going to be getting a 3090, I'm going to get a proper 3090, not a questionably, cost-optimized one. Yeah. What else did I want to complain about? Oh, yeah, and then there's other things like, say, the Ryzen, yeah, like this poll, which, it went in favor on the liquid nitrogen, so I ultimately ended up buying up liquid nitrogen. But a lot of the comments under this poll really didn't understand like the distinction between the like why, or more like didn't get why I'd be so interested in the Ryzen 5 5500, right? Because like that CPU has terrible gaming performance, but the question I have for the people who like terrible gaming performance, I don't know about you, but I don't see no games on this channel. Like, I don't see no gaming benchmarks. So I don't see where the issue is with that. But like the main reason I'm interested in that CPU, and also the CPU performance is not that great, but the reason I'm so interested in that CPU is because it's the cheapest way to get a 5000 series APU memory controller. If AMD had literally released a quad-core version of that chip, I'd be just as interested in it. In fact, I'd be more interested because it would be cheaper, and all I really want is that memory controller. Hell, they could have released a dual-core, and I would have still been interested. Because, again, I want that memory controller. Like, this is literally a 5600G without the iGPU. I want the memory controller. I couldn't care less how many cores it came with or how much L3 cache it came with. I mean, I do need at least one core, so it's a functioning CPU. But outside of one core, like past that, I don't care. Also, cheaper, better. Um, Also, this CPU should actually have a decent amount of overclocking headroom because, like, the max boost out of the box is really low, so that would have made it somewhat interesting to mess with. But primarily, I just wanted the memory controller. And a lot of comments under this were just like, "Oh, but the gaming like it's a bad CPU from a performance perspective," and it's like, yeah, but it looks fun to overclock, and that's the part I care about. So yeah, so that's another one of those like what I want out of the videos, or yeah, what I'm interested in versus what the audience is interested in, kind of struggles right there. Um, oh, this is not happening. I do want to mention that this is definitely not happening anytime soon. Or maybe ever, because like this is one of those things where like every so often I look at all the different CPU water blocks that exist, and I sit there looking at them and I'm like, I wonder which one's best. And then I try to look up reviews for some of those water blocks, and most of the reviews are like, first of all, there's not that many good water block reviews, and then the ones you do find, I don't feel like they test at high enough heat loads, but at the same time, I don't know that I really want to get into doing a bunch of water cooling testing. It's like I have plenty of other stuff to test as is, and this is just kind of like, do I really care that much? So, yeah. Yeah, this is one of the things I've been working on. Um, Need to figure out how to point a camera at it. Don't really feel like doing that. And I have a whole bunch of I have a whole bunch of mods. Like, well, I mean, yeah, there's like a whole bunch of mods I want to do with, well, is it mods? Like, I've literally replaced the VRM on the card at this point. But there's more modifications I want to do. Yeah, so actually more mods, yeah. So I want to do more mods to this card. And, like, the way I plan to do most of those mods is, again, with the help of the oscilloscope. Which means we're going to get another one of those video nobody understands or video nobody watches situations, which is just great. I love that. Because the thing is, like, I think some people might be like, oh, but why don't you actually show footage of the card running? Because it's not the part I care about. I want the freaking numbers off the oscilloscope. Like, the only reason we're putting the card in the system, turning it on and running it, is so I can get the numbers off the oscilloscope, so I can make further improvements, so I can put it back in the system, so I can get more, to see if the modifications made a difference, so that I can pull it back out of the system, go back and forth a few times like that, and then take it on LN2. Because yeah, it's a GTX 970, and those like Maxwell cards on LN2 are ridiculous. Like they are absolutely insane. Um, and yeah, like this should be a ton of fun. To run cold. I mean, it's just been a ton of fun working on it because like I've been testing out some new. Like first of all, this is a new power board. And like yeah. Also, I have good soldering equipment finally, so that's made doing stuff like this a lot more fun than it used to be. Because yeah. Um, Anyway, so the last thing I wanted to sort of talk about is like the whole I don't have scripts for my videos thing, and the reason I don't have scripts for my videos is because say the struggle I'm having with the 3090 Ti video, right? Where it's like, how much do I talk about the fuses? How much do I talk about the power stages? How much do I talk about the 12-pin power connector? How much do I talk about the reference 3090 PCB? Like, the problem I'm having with shooting that video is not like it's not, like the little details. It's the whole freaking thing. It's like I don't know like how much do I want to talk about the fuses? And writing a script is not going to change that. Right? Like it literally will not change that. Because like like that's kind of the thing. Also, I'm not very good at writing. So like yeah, which is well, I'd say it's not that I'm it's less I'm not good at writing and more like I am not good with language in general, which is why like so when I write, I try to generally use fewer words. I actually generally when I write stuff down, I try to like if I don't have to present it to other people, I just use bullet points for everything. It's just like just words, not even bullet points, like just some very basic formatting and just words like does X, does Y, does like very very blunt deliver like no delivery, just information on a page to be consumed like a list. Very boring. um and the thing is, so that's what I do when I try to write, because I'm bad with words, and I just like how building like how do you make a sentence that's not like a paragraph long run on and like multiple lines of paragraph. So um that kind of like I really struggle with writing well. And so in writing, I try to use less words because it's not so obvious that I have a really hard time like putting words together in a way that makes sense and flows and all of that. Um, and in speech, it shows up the opposite way, where it's like I use a lot more words than necessary to get my point across, not because I actually want to do that on purpose, but because I'm stalling for time. Like the whole reason I use the word like so much is because it gives me time to think about what I'm going to say next without having to think about what I'm currently saying. Right? So there's a lot of filler words that I say um, just so that and yeah, like all of that is just because I don't know what word I want to use next and I'm taking entirely too long to decide on it. And most of my video production, basically, like most of the video production stalls come down to, just straight up like large scale decision paralysis. And writing a script is not going to change that. I'm just going to have a write decision paralysis in text instead of decision paralysis in video. Like, like that's why I don't try to write scripts, because I know what's going to happen. I'm gonna like I'll be reading the script and I'll decide midway through reading the script that I don't like the script anymore and it needs to be rewritten, which is basically what happens when I shoot videos. Like I'm shooting my video, and halfway through the video I've decided I no longer like what I've said in the last 20 minutes, so we're throwing them out. Um, and yeah. And so a combination of all of these factors has led to the current situation of there not being videos for 10 days, because yeah. Also, I don't really like this video either. Like, the funny thing is, I think this video also suffers from the I didn't get my point across, because I feel like a lot of the comments that I got under this video think that liquid metal damage occurs when you're when you're first applying liquid metal to the GPU. In my experience, the worst liquid damage occurs not when you're putting the liquid metal on, but after you've put the liquid metal on and when you put the heatsink back on, that's when the problems start. Because if you apply a little bit too much liquid metal to the GPU and then you put the heatsink on, the excess liquid metal squeezes out. And then it's free to move around because it doesn't stick to basically anything other than like metals. Yeah, and I feel like that point didn't really get across in this video, because I feel like a lot of people, might see this streak of liquid metal over here and they think, oh, this is from like somebody spraying too much liquid metal on. But no, this happens when you have too much liquid metal over here. Then you put the heatsink on the card. Then you start moving the card around to install it in a system. And some drops of liquid metal start, moving around. Also, this card got shipped, so in shipping it, I think the box it arrived in was kind of banged up. The PCIe bracket was bent, so evidently the card, suffered some physical shock in shipping. And so, like, most of this liquid metal spreading around the board happened with the heatsink in place, not before the heatsink was put on, which is why, like, the whole, like, oh, like, and I never mentioned that in the video, and I feel like maybe I should have. I didn't think I needed to, but maybe I should have. Also, I feel like I've been getting progressively louder the longer this video has been going on, just as I've been getting more and more frustrated with just all of my issues with running the channel. I was just like things I don't say that I should have said. And then sometimes I feel like I say too much and should have said less. And I don't know where the balance is. Like, I just have no idea because I'm no good with words. I kind of, like to some extent, it's like, I wish I could just like send you my thoughts. And then I wonder if like, if that was actually possible, would that even work? And I don't mean that from like, of course you can't send thoughts to people. No, I mean like, if I could send thoughts, would me directly beaming my thoughts over to someone actually help them understand the topic at hand? Or would it potentially just make them more confused? Right? Because like I feel like that might actually be an issue. Like I don't feel like it's like yeah. I've run out of words again. Or it's just like I am very bad at like getting my point across or something. I don't know. I really don't. And so that's just kind of been, it's stalling out video production recently. Cause and I don't know, maybe I should just not care. Screw it. Like if people don't understand my videos, do I even care? But then who am I even making them for? And at the same time, I do realize that like there's a lot of comments on my videos where people are just like, "Oh, I just like listening to your voice," which is super discouraging, by the way. Um, just in case you wanted to know, that's actually super discouraging. For someone like me, because like to me, the videos are about delivering information, and so having somebody tell me, like, I think under this video, there's one comment that's like, "I like your funny words, Magic Man." Um, yeah, there it is. Very encouraging. That's actually sort of most of the issues of the channel right there. Um, oh, and then we have like the RAM timing videos, which those are another issue. Like this one was like relatively successful. I had a bunch of people go like, "Oh, you need to do another one," so I did another one. Like it doesn't even get half as many views. Admittedly, this is a month old, but like, whoops. Oh, that's the write-up for the 3090 Ti Supreme X. How did I manage to click on that? Oh, well, whatever. Anyway, I should end this waste of your time right here because we're at an hour and 3 minutes and nothing about. Well, actually, I'd say I've dumped some useful information throughout this video. It's just kind of like, yeah, man. And now I don't want to post it, and I don't want to do the outro, and that's another thing is freaking outros on YouTube videos, and like. And what I mean by that is, of course, like the like, share, subscribe, Patreon, that. Like, I hate doing that. Like, I have to do that because it literally runs the channel. Like, Patreon is what keeps Patreon is way more helpful for the channel than, like, YouTube ads or whatever. I mean, I don't have anything else, right? Like, there's the Teespring store. Here's Patreon. Technically, now I also have a Bandcamp, but like I don't have embedded video ads, and yeah, so it's like so I got to do that, but I hate doing it, And the funny thing is, like, I even reserve it for the end of the video because, like, all the other YouTubers, you know, they make a. It's like you get told to subscribe, I think, in like the first 5 minutes by most channels, and it's just like I get why they do it. I don't want to do it. I'm sure it works. But that just doesn't like I don't know. Like when you start telling people to do something, I feel like well, telling people to subscribe. I don't know. Because I do tell people to do things, right? But I don't know why I feel so weird about the subscribe thing. It just feels, yeah, it just feels weird. As well as the Patreon and all of that. I think it's mostly because, like, I don't like asking people for help. Yeah, that'll be my, that'll be my logic for it. Like, basically, I don't like asking people for help. Just in general with anything. It's like if I have a problem with something, um, asking somebody for help is sort of like the absolute last resort. And the thing is, you know, asking you to subscribe like that helps the channel. That's all it really like. It doesn't help you, or at least I like it. There, well, it helps you find my videos, but it primarily helps me. Or actually, it doesn't help you find my videos because YouTube doesn't send notifications. So actually, I do have a point. Like literally, subscribing only helps me. It doesn't help you because YouTube won't tell you about your subscriptions. Um, like I manually check my subscriptions on YouTube because YouTube is so freaking useless. Um, you know, it's like I subscribe to this channel. What's so hard about telling me when they post content? And it's just like YouTube's like, no, algorithm thinks it knows best, and so I have to check my subscriptions manually. Which is great. I really appreciate that. Where was I going with this? Yeah, so I don't like doing outros. And like, I guess maybe I should even be doing shoutouts like part way through videos, but like this just feels like an annoying distraction. Like there are some ways to like, especially in videos that are supposed to be like I like to think of my videos as being primarily like, I wouldn't say educational. Or I don't know. I don't like I literally don't know what I'm doing with my channel, so I should just end this. I should just literally just end this video because this isn't going anywhere. There's no progress being made. Um the thing is at the end of the like I'm still thinking about this from the perspective of but like I have to make videos, so I have to make a decision about how I want to deal with that. Like do I just do I still include all the details or just I don't know. Like, I don't like the idea of going over, like, let's just stick to the Supremex PCB breakdown, because that's sort of the thing that, like, the Tachyon, like, I can't multitask, so the Tachyon PCB breakdown is now very much in second place behind the Supremex, because I've decided that the Supremex theoretically should be easier to complete, since there's less, like, I think, simpler. I think it's a simpler video. So I can probably axe the discussion about the regular reference, like the regular 3090 PCB, because I can reserve that for like a different 3090 Ti PCB, a worse 3090 Ti PCB video, because even the very worst 3090 Ti is oh so much better than a 3090 in terms of power delivery. But the the fuses, I really don't like the idea of pointing out the fuses and saying that they're good without saying why they're good. Right? Like if you're going to say something is good, you should explain why it's good. The one The one problem is like it's always the same reason, right? Like that's my issue with it. It's always going to be the same reason. But there's really no better way. Like it's not like I can like basically what would end up happening. Like theoretically, if this was a website, you could have just like pop-ups for every like if you had like a list of positives and negatives for the GPU, right? You could just like mouse over each of those positives or mouse over each of the negatives, and there would just be a little pop-up explaining why it's a positive or why it's a negative. Um, but you can't do that in videos because they're freaking videos. um, and I mean, I've been repeating myself on explanations of things for so long as is, so I don't know why I can't just continue. I don't know. It's just like it just feels like it's over like boil like yeah. My minor annoyances with all the little things that I have to keep doing over and over and over again, and like yeah, it's just like it's boiled over, and here we are, 10 days of no videos because I've been having a great time not recording, not like well I haven't because the thing is like like I've benched on LN2 and then right after I'm done benching on LN2 it's just like oh shit I need to make videos and then I try to make a video and it's like oh it's not getting done and so like it's not great actually it's terrible because it's like at this point like when it was 1 day or 2 days it was like oh yeah I've got time right I ideally want to post a video every other day, but missing 3 days isn't the end of the world. But now we're at 10, which is still not the end of the world, but now it's starting to become a problem. Actually, it was a problem. It's now like a bigger problem. It's becoming it's getting worse. Um, So yeah, at this point, it's like, well, now I can't do other things without constantly thinking like, hey, you should be making videos. 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 Why are there no videos? Could you be making a video about what you're working on right now? Because a lot of the time I'm working on like, stuff that could be videos. Um, I really don't do anything outside of like overclocking and modding hardware other than play games and read entirely too much manga and Reddit. So, um, yeah. And so now it's just like this eternal, like, hey, you should be working on a video. And it's like, I don't even know what video I want to work on anymore. Or what would even be in that video if I did work on it. I'll just end this here. Yeah. So that's that. That's the 1 hour and 12-minute rant about how running this channel, it's just like, it doesn't work. It's just not been working. And I don't know why. Um, I just want to not care. Just actually not care about like if people understand the videos. Just do the oscilloscope videos anyway and ignore the fact that nobody understands them. Or more like that's not nobody. Like there are people who get them. I know for a fact that there are people who get them. Most people don't. And the funny thing is like I've done videos that basically cover most of the information that is necessary to understand the oscilloscope videos. I should probably reference them. Actually, I'm pretty sure. How am I going to pull this up? I did say I wanted to end the video, but I am pretty sure that videos, yeah, you could watch. Wait. Videos. Oh, man. Oh, right. That's what that does. Right. So here we have videos you should definitely watch. Dual rank versus single rank. Intel like CPU, yeah, so Z170 through Z390, transient response, part 2. I never did never did do part 3, did I? How load line calibration actually works. Yeah, this would basically cover everything you need to know. I think these 3 would pretty much cover the things you need to know for the oscilloscope videos. Or yeah, this also. Rambling about Peltier, no. I don't know why this one's in this list. Oh yeah, then we have the X16, X8, X4. Rambling about DDR4 memory channels and ranks. Rambling about DDR4 chips and PCBs. See, lots of useful information. Probably several hours of content right there. This has 9,000 views. How many does this have? 9,000 as well. And how load line calibration actually works. 24,000 views. So actually like a decent number of views. How do people not know how... Wait. I'm pretty sure this covers... Oh, wait, no, this covers like... Oh, this doesn't show any waveforms. Okay, well, I guess that explains that. Man, now I don't want to post this video. Because it's like terrible. Yeah, and this is another issue. I know the video keeps getting longer, but this is another issue, is like one of the main reasons why I've been putting off making this video complaining about running the channel for so long is because I feel like it is taking away content from people. Like, instead of posting this, I should post something useful. You know? Yeah. So, that's it. But like, I don't even know if I want to read your comments to whatever the hell I've just recorded. I actually mostly remember what I just recorded, but yeah, not really anything I would take back. There's maybe some things I would reword, make it. It doesn't need to be shorter, like, because this is a video that's not meant to be content, and so therefore it'll get the most views, of course, won't it? I thought this was a good video. Or at least halfway decent. That didn't really do much. Oh, man. The thing is, I have so many ideas for videos, the thing is, the ideas are too vague. And I feel like yeah, this is just getting worse. I'm just going to stop recording here, and I'm just going to post this, because, like, I'm not going to solve this. I don't, like, at least I don't feel like right now I'm gonna solve this, and so what's the point? Like, I'm just wasting my time, and if I upload this, I'm wasting your time, so I do apologize for that. There's links in the description you might want to check out if you know, think I didn't waste your time enough. I should maybe start linking this page on all of my videos. Anyway, I'll hit the stop button now. Sorry for wasting your time.